Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. This video I'm going to look at the second half of the Knights vs Dragon duel deck, which is the Dragon half, which is a mono-red deck. So let's take a look at the deck list. We've got 17 creatures, 7 instants, 6 sorceries, 3 enchantments, 3 artifacts, 24 mountains, and we've got a mana curve off to the side there, all over the place, because obviously this is it's full of dragons, so it's like a big kind of grindy, slow red deck, not a kind of a quick one like we've seen maybe like Chandra's deck been. But anyway, yeah, let's dive into it, start looking at the cards. So the foil face rare with new art is Precon Hellkite, which is 6 and double red for a 5/5 with flash and flying. When it ends the battlefield, does 5 damage divide as you choose amongst any number of target creatures and/or players. Most of the time, just going to be 5 straight to opponent's face, but obviously you can spread this out however you want, especially if you do it. Like mid-combat with flash and stuff, potentially kill like a bunch of attackers or maybe blockers or something. Yeah, I think that could be a fun way to use it. And yeah, when this was originally released, it was in Time Spiral block, and it wasn't mythic rare because that wasn't a rarity at the time. So I think this is the I think this was genuinely like the only available mono red dragon at mythic rare that was available for this product, because there were other mythic rare dragons coming like in sets down the line. There was some in Alara, but they were all multicolored. We got stuff like Moonveil Dragon, I think, in Innistrad, but that's a couple of years after this set was released. So really, Bogarden Hellkite was really the only viable option. I think it was obviously bumped up to Mythic Rare to give the Dragon deck an actual like face card it could use. But yeah, I think it's fine. Obviously super expensive, but it's got a good effect. There is like a little bit of mana ramp in here as well, so it's not impossible, I suppose. We've got a single Kilnmouth Dragon, so 5 and double red for a 5/5 with Amplify 3. If you don't know what Amplify is, and I don't blame if you don't, because it's a very weird, old, obscure mechanic. So Amplify is when it enters the battlefield, you can reveal as many creatures that share a type with it, in this case dragons, from your hand, and for everyone you reveal, it gets that many +1/+1 counters. So I think it was Scourge when this mechanic was used. It's the only place it's been used. It might have actually been used in maybe like a one-off, like in a Horizons or a Commander Legends set or something, but mostly in Scourge. Though it was mostly like Amplify 1 or 2, and the stuff it was on was like usually really overcosted, so it was kind of bad. But Killmouth at least is okay, because even if you don't do the Amplify effect, it's still like a 5/5 flyer for 7, which is sort of alright. Obviously, it's much better if you do Amplify it, because it's got an ability that is tied to its +1/+1 counters, which is you tap it, it does damage you to the number of counters on it to a creature or player, which is really good, because if you amplify it just once, then great, then it can tap to bolt something, which is really good. But then, of course, then you're not attacking with your 8/8 flying dragon, I suppose. So it's a bit at odds with itself. You've got like all the rares in the deck are dragons. You've got a few like non-rare dragons, I suppose. So it's not impossible that you could maybe potentially get like 2 amplifiers out of this and get it with 6 counters. And then they can tap to do 6, which is great. But again, like you say, then you're not attacking with like at that point like an 11/11. I think it's a fun inclusion actually. This was definitely one of the best of the all the amplify creatures back in Scourge. So yeah, interesting choice for a reprint. We've got a single Mordant Dragon. This is one of my favourite budget mono red dragons. So 3 in triple red for a 5/5 flying. You can spend 1 in red to give it +1/+0 turn 10, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it can also deal that much damage to a creature that player controls. So sort of again, like most like these dragon effects, like a bit win more. Like if you're already hitting your opponent with like a big dragon, do you also need the extra effect? But like it's better to have it than not have it. So yeah, if this gets to swing in, potentially pumped up because it's got fire breathing, then you can just like again like nuke one of your opponent's creatures, which is really solid. I really like Mordant Dragon. We've got Sheevan Hellkite, 5 and double red for a 5/5 flying. Spend 1 red to have it deal 1 damage to a creature or player. So the Knight deck does have a few like smaller utility creatures, so this is actually okay. And obviously by the time you cast Sheevan Hellkite, you've got probably, well, I mean, you might not have access to 7 mana because there is some ramp in here, like there's a Seething Song. But yeah, let's say most of the time you will have access to 7 mana because you just managed to cast this, which means then you can use this ability, at least 3 times, so you can spread out 3 damage. That's basically like an Arc Lightning every turn, which is pretty fun. So yeah, that's fine. It doesn't require a tap like the Kilnmouth is, so you can do this ability and still like swing with it. So yeah, pretty good. Thunder Dragon, this is a reprint, I think, from Portal, with new art, obviously. So 5 and double red for a 5/5 flying. When it ends the battlefield, it just does 3 damage to every creature without flying, which is most of the creatures in the Knights deck. You've got some non-flying creatures in this deck as well. You've got like some goblins and stuff, but they were going to die anyway. So yeah, this is kind of nice. It's obviously expensive, but it is then like a late game sweep, I suppose. Get rid of a bunch of stuff on the ground, so that's okay. And also, it's just again like a big 5/5 flyer. And then Voracious Dragon, so 3 and double red for a 4/4 flyer. So it's air elemental, which is absolutely fine anyway. And then Devour 1, which is as it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures, and for every one it eats, it gets a +1/+1 counter. But it has a special effect where if it eats specifically goblins, if it enters the battlefield, it does damage to target creature or player equal to twice the number of goblins it devoured. So there's a very, very small sort of like goblin minor theme in here. Like you've got like a few things that make goblin tokens. You've got some goblin creatures that want to be sacrificed, that they've got death triggers. So this is okay. I think it's a bit of a weird choice. Maybe I would have gone maybe with a different dragon. Still maybe one that's like a 5-drop, like this kind of like red air elemental range, I suppose. But like this is okay. And honestly, I mean, like maybe just the choice of dragons was just limited. Kind of surprising we didn't get Shivan Dragon here, because Shivan Dragon is always like the go-to for classic red dragons. But yeah, glad we actually had something different here with the 6 rares in here. Right, getting to the rest of the cards. We've got 2 Dragon Whelps, 2 and double red for a 2/3 flying. You can spend 1 red to give it +1/+0 to end turn, but if you do it 4 or more times in turn, he dies at the end of the next end step, which is okay because, I mean, if you're pumping that much into it anyway, you know, that's kind of maybe not a great sign because you didn't have anything else going on. It's okay. Like it's a very rare. I think you would overcommit that much into this ability, and like you can still do it and like get a one time shot out of it. It's basically just here as a cheaper dragon you get down. It's still got flying. Obviously, it's still got the fire breathing ability. So yeah, I think Dragon Whelp is fine in here. I prefer Furnace Whelp, but because it doesn't have this restriction, but it has 1 less toughness, so I suppose it's a bit whatever, apples and oranges, swings and roundabouts, whatever. We've got a single Henge Guardian, so 5 mana for a 3/4. It's an artifact creature. It's a dragon worm because it had like a weird creature type update, and spend 2 to give it trample on turn. This is one of the only, I think, 2 cards in the deck that is an answer to Silver Knight in the Knight deck, because that's got protection from red. The rest of the deck can't touch it. So this is the one thing in here. I mean, like I feel like you could have just not had Henge Guardian in here, and then like you wouldn't have to have Silver Knight, I suppose, and then you wouldn't have to have this whole workaround. Maybe I suppose. I mean, it's fine, I suppose. It's like, it's an old card. It's kind of overcost of what it is. It would be fine just having trample on its own, I think, like with having to pay for it, but it's an old card, so yeah, it's kind of bad. And they've got Dragon Speaker Shaman. It's a real shame that there's only 1 of these. It would have been much better, I think, to have take out the Henge Gun completely and have 2 of these Dragon Speaker Shamans, because this is one of the cards that really makes the deck tick. So 1 and double red for a 2/2 just makes your dragons 2 less to cast, which is obviously fantastic. I mean, drop them a lot sooner. And having, if you had 2 of these, just like for the extra bit of consistency and just more chance that you get dragons out, you don't get completely maybe overrun by the Knight deck while waiting to build up to dragons. So it would have been nice to have 2 of them in here. And then I said very small goblin sub theme in here. So we've got a single skirt prospector, which we actually just had in the. I say just had. I mean, it's been ages since we looked at the elves versus goblins, but it was in there as well. So 1 red mana for a 1/1. You can sacrifice goblin to add 1 red to your mana pool, which is it's okay. There's not a huge number of goblins in here. It's not like the goblin deck, which is full of goblins. But if it just you just need that extra 1 red to get a dragon out a turn earlier, then it's fine, I suppose. A single Bloodmark Mentor, so 1 red for 1/1, gives all your red creatures first strike, which is pretty good actually for like 2 mana. So like really cheap effect to make your whole board like immediately like much more threatening, both attacking and blocking. It's okay. It's okay. I mean, like you've already got kind of big dragons, so giving them the first strike obviously helps a bit, I suppose. 2 Mudbutton Torch Runner, 2 in a red for a 1/1. When it dies, it bolts something. So this is something that wants to be eaten by the was it Prey Caesar dragon? Yeah. So it eats this. Obviously, you get the death trigger, and then the Prey Caesar can do its effect as well. Is it Prey Caesar? Voracious Dragon. Prey Caesar, I think, is one from a Plane Shift set. I've completely got them mixed up because it also has Devour the Prey Caesar. Anyway. And we've got a single Firebelly Changing, who is technically another dragon, I suppose, or a goblin. So 1 red for a 1/1 has changing, so it's every creature type, and it's got a limited fire breathing effect. It's fine. It's just a space filler, I think. This is a really confusing pick, Bogard and Rager. So 5 and a red for a 3/4 with flash, and when it ends the battlefield, a target creature gets +4/+0 to turn, which is a really big buff, but it's on such an expensive body, like it's 6 mana. I suppose you could view this as kind of like a removal spell, like 6 mana to create a like maybe like a 7/4 instant speed, and then it blocks something. Or you drop a blocker and it's also like buffing up another creature. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's so expensive though, for like at 6. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, even though that buff is really big though, so maybe, I don't know, sort of balances out. Single Cinderwall, 1 red mana for a 3/3 defender. When it blocks, it gets destroyed at end of combat, so you basically get 1 use out of it. Again, I'd argue maybe the deck needed more of these, just like early game blockers, just to maybe try and like stem the tide of like those cheap early knights from the other deck, maybe. And then a bunch of burn that requires mountains. So this actually annoys me because I said in the last video when I was looking at the Knights one, this was a product I actually missed out on, and so I wasn't really aware of the deck list going into it. But I did pick up the Venser versus Koth deck, which we'll look at in a few videos, and it's annoying because these cards also show up in the Koth deck, so it's really annoying that there's actually kind of a lot of repetition actually in the mono red dual decks. But yeah, anyway, I just thought that was worth mentioning. It's just annoying because these could have been like literally any other cards and it would have been fine. But yeah, we've got Splitting Earth, which does damage to a creature equal to the number of mountains you control, playing mono red, so it's it scales up really nicely. It's a really cheap burn spell, and it has a really high ceiling. Seismic Strike is exactly the same, but instant speed, which sort of just makes me think, why not have like 2 of one of them rather than 1 of each? But whatever. And then Jaws of Stone is sort of exactly the same, does X damage equal to the number of mountains, but you can spread it out amongst any number of different creatures or players, which is okay. Again, like, it's 6 mana, so the time you cast it, ideally you'd have 6 mountains, so then you can spread out 6 damage, which is not nothing. Yeah, it's okay. Single Ghostfire. This is the other card that can deal with Silver Knight. So 2 in a red. It's colorless. I wonder if it's been updated. I should have Devoid. I'm not sure. That'd be interesting. But it does 3 damage to a creature or player, so it gets around protection from red because it's a colorless spell. But yeah, it's a fun inclusion to have. Then Punishing Fire with new artwork. This is a card that was banned because it comboed with, I think it was a Grove of the Burn Willows, just to be easily repeatable burn. So 1 red, it does 2 damage to a creature or player, and if an opponent gains life, you can pay red. If you do, it comes back from your graveyard to your hand. I can't remember off the top of my head if the Night deck actually had that much life gain. And then there was a few lifelink creatures. There was obviously stuff like Lockstone Warhammer. I don't remember if there was a huge life gain theme in there, so like I'm not sure how often this ability would have gone off, but again, I suppose it's better than nothing. Like, it could potentially be a repeatable burn, sure. And then Cone of Flame. I feel like I've talked about Cone of Flame so much more than potentially anyone in their life has ever talked about Cone of Flame. It's fine as a burn spell. 3 in double red. It does 3/2/1 damage to 3 different targets. It's fine. Obviously, it can be really efficient if you get it right. We've got Breath of Daragas. This is really the only sweeper spell in here, which I feel is a bit of a shame. I feel like the deck could have maybe used like some more like pyroclasm effects. But Breath of Daragas is actually pretty good for like an old card. So 1 red. And it does 1 damage to each creature without flying in each player. But if you kick it for an extra 2, which is really not that much, then it suddenly jumps all the way up to doing 4 damage, which is like such a huge leap for like not much mana. And then that pretty much just completely wipes the board because there's very few things in the Night deck that can take 4 damage and still stick around. So yeah, really really nice that Breath of Daragas is here. We've got 2 dragon fodders. It just makes 2 goblin tokens. So again, just like chump blockers or like sacrifice fodder for the voracious dragon later. Yeah, it's fine. Again, something to do early game. And then this is a really weird choice as well. Temporary Insanity. So 3 in a red. Untapped target creature with power less than the number of cards in your graveyard. Gain control of it until end turn, and it gains haste until end turn. So it's instant speed, act of treason, and a little fun bit of trivia. This is, I think, the first act of treason effect in red, because it used to be a blue effect with Ray of Command, and this is a reprint from Odyssey. I think I want to say Odyssey block, which is why it cares about the number of cards in your graveyard, because Odyssey block had a graveyard matters theme, which had like threshold and all that kind of stuff, and it's just such a weird choice to include here. Like, if it was just normal act of treason, that would be that would like make more sense to me. Obviously, it's got some versatility because like it's instant speed, and instant speed Act of Treason is really strong because you can turn like an attacker into a blocker. You can steal it while it's attacking, and then it gets it gets untapped as well, and then you can use it to block. So actually pretty good. It's just a very weird reprint to have, and I'm guessing it's in here just to have like another sort of like type of combat trick rather than just a straightforward normally a sorcery speed Act of Treason. But yeah, it's weird that this, I can't remember the top of my head if there is like an instant speed Act of Treason. Maybe at 4 that like doesn't have the restriction. Maybe the restriction is another thing actually that's kind of annoying because like obviously we're just playing mono red. We don't have like a huge kind of like graveyard theme, I suppose, other than like casting burn spells maybe. But it's just a weird choice to me I think to include it in the deck. Another Mountains Matters card, Claws of Valakut, so 1 double red. Or it goes on a creature and it gets +1/+0 for every mountain you control and has first strike. So if you put this on one of your big dragons, it's it's very much like a win more thing. Always think this is really nice actually because again, presuming you can cast it when you've got 3 mountains out, +3/+0 and first strike. It's okay. You could like even make like a little goblin token, like a big threat, but then the Knight deck has so much first strike anyway, so you're sort of just really breaking even, I suppose. But yeah, it's okay. Captive Flame, this is quite nice. This essentially gives all your whole board access to fire breathing. You can just pay 1 red to give any creature +1/+0 turn, which is actually pretty good, I think. So that's a nice inclusion, I think. And then Shiv's Embrace, 2 and double red. Or it goes on a creature, gives it +2/+2 flying, and it also gives it fire breathing. Again, bit of a win more card, obviously, but again, it's it's okay, I suppose. It's okay. Then we've got 2 Fiery Fall, 5 and a red. Does 5 damage to a creature, or you can land cycle it for 1 and a red. So you can pay 1 red, 1 and a red, discard it, search your library for a basic land, read it, put into hand. So sort of like Red's version of Rampant Growth, I suppose. So you could do that, or late game it is like an okay-ish burn spell. Obviously expensive though. And then Seething Song with Loving New Art here, so 2 and a red, and gives you 5 red. So yeah, super good, helps you accelerate and gets big expensive dragons out potentially a bit quicker. And then we've got 2 Armillary Spheres, so 2 mana artifact, you can pay 2, tap, sacrifice it, set your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put into hand. So again, like another sort of like a no, it's not quite a mana rock, is it? But like just to help you get land, so you're consistently playing lands and hitting curve properly and getting your dragons out, possibly thinning the deck a little bit as well. So yeah, this is okay inclusion as well. And then a single Dragon's Claw, 2 mana artifact. Whenever a player casts a red spell, you may gain 1 life, which is fine, I suppose. Actually, considering how aggressive the Knight deck can be, this could potentially like be a little bit of a stall, actually, because obviously playing mono red, pretty much every spell you cast is going to trigger this. So you could potentially gain a bit of life with this and stall out a little bit, and maybe just eke out a win by holding on to like maybe 2 or 3 extra life. But you've only got 1 of them in here, so it's not a very consistent plan. And then 24 Mountains, which is a shame because it would have been nice to maybe have a few non-basics just to make things a bit more interesting. Considering how many non-basics the Knight deck has, just a shame, I think. But then it wouldn't trigger all the it wouldn't go well with all the cards that care about mountains, I suppose. Right, so that was the deck. There are a few cards I'm going to talk about that like I think probably should have been here. The one that really stands out to me, and like I'm not the only one that thinks this, because I think a lot of people were wondering this when the deck came out, when it was revealed. Hunted Dragon. Why is this not in here? This is like Hunted Dragon is like so on theme for this product, and it's not included, and it's so crazy to me. So 3 and double red for 6/6 with flying and haste. So like really fantastic, right? Come down like 5 mana for 6/6 that can swing the same player. And when it comes to play, you make your opponent makes 3 2/2 white knight creature tokens. So it's so on theme, and it's not in here. I would have preferred this, I think, to the Voracious Dragon, because it's the same cost, it's bigger, it's got haste, so it can immediately swing. I think this would have been a great inclusion here, and it's really I'm sure there's probably like really good reasons they didn't include it, because it was within the time frame it was available. So yeah, really weird this wasn't included. And then Dragon Roost, I think, could have been a fun enchantment to include as a maybe a late game mana sink, 4 and double red, and you can only 5 and double red to make just keep pooping out dragon tokens, which could have been kind of fun maybe. And then Form of the Dragon, I think this could have been kind of fun. Actually, this could have been maybe like a really fun. This could have been the foil face mythic maybe, because like it definitely feels very mythic because it's such a weird card with such a weird effect. So it's 4 and triple red. The beginning of your upkeep, it essentially turns you into a dragon, which is really cool. So the beginning of your upkeep, form of the dragon does 5 damage to target creature player. At the end of each turn, your life total becomes 5. Kind of, yeah, like a creature. You know, when you clean up combat damage on it and stuff, and creatures that fly and can't attack you. So this definitely would have been sort of like an end game play, because there's very little in the Knight deck that could deal with this, because haven't got a lot of flyers in the deck. So yeah, this I think would have been like a fun inclusion, and yeah, potentially a good foil face rare would have been, and then maybe make this deck stand out a little bit more by having something other than a creature as the foil face rare maybe. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. So how do I think about the project overall? I think it's okay. Like I said, this is the first dual deck that I didn't buy, and I don't feel too bad about it, honestly, because looking at the two deck lists, I wasn't blown away really by either of them. If I had to pick one out of the two, I think the Knight deck probably just works a little bit better. Just, and if we're going to be very mercenary about it, it's got like the better, higher value cards in there, like Knight of the Reliquary and Knight of the White Orchid as well. And there's a few other like really good cards in there. So that's how I'd say. Like, again, it's like it's kind of close. Which one is my favorite, but I'd lean more on the Knight side. The Dragon deck just really doesn't interest me that much. I just think it looks really kind of clunky and inefficient to play. The Knight one, I think I can see that at least working pretty well. But I'd love to know, obviously, what you think about these decks. Like, if you have a particular favourite between the two, let me know. Stick a comment down below. I didn't ever play these decks against each other, so if you have experience playing these decks, like, let me know which one kind of, if it was kind of equal when they played against each other, or like one was much better than the other. Like, let me know. I'd definitely like to hear about that one. But yeah, I'll be back next time to start looking at another dual deck. So I hope you join me for that. But until then, thanks for watching and listening, and have a great day.